In all my years of watching combat sports, I have never ever been more worried for someone's life more than I am for Chris Eubank Jr. Chris Eubank Jr.'s life is in danger, but the man, I love Chris. I absolutely love Chris Eubank, and I love Conor Benn. I met Conor Benn. I'm going to tell you this beautiful story, beautiful people. But Chris Eubank Jr., the man is so greedy when you talk about money that, God forbid, the man might get himself killed. God forbid. God forbid. Let's talk about it. I really can't blame Conor Benn for what's going on with the rehydration clause, with the Chris. I mean, look, Chris Eubank Jr. I feared for the man's life in the first fight, and I fear for his life even more in the second fight. Why? Because the man is older, and the man took so much punishment in that first fight. Not just any type of punishment, but punishment while being dehydrated and drained. And listen, beautiful people, the brain can only take so much. I mean, if you are fully hydrated, and if you are fully healthy, and if you are young, there is still a high possibility that you might lose your life inside the squared circle. But when you're older, and when you're weight drained, when there's a rehydration clause, and when you've taken so much punishment, listen, you're asking for a disaster to transpire. I'm gonna be honest. You are just asking for a disaster and a tragedy to happen. And I actually blame Eddie Hearn. I blame Frank Smith. And most importantly, I blame the British Boxing Board of Control, British Boxing Board of Control's Robert Smith. I blame Robert Smith for licensing this fight. I mean, look, I love Conor Benn. Conor Benn is one of my favorite fighters ever. Actually, I talked to Conor Benn before I met the man. I met the man when I went to the States, when I went to New York. I met Conor Benn, and listen, out of all the fighters that I have met in my lifetime, and trust me, I have met a few, Conor Benn is by far the purest hearted, most humble, most gracious, and simply the nicest person I have ever met in the industry of boxing. In all of combat sports, forget boxing, the man got a heart of gold. I swear to you, beautiful people. And actually, after he tested positive, if you remember, he disappeared for like 6 months. I texted him. I asked him, I was like, Conor, what in the world, man? Like, why would you do such a thing? All of us people, who are like younger than you and close to your age, we all look up to you, You are an amazing person. What in the world was that? And he sent me like a lengthy message. I'm going to make a separate video about. I'm going to read you what he told me. Listen, and then a couple of years later, back in May, when I went to the States, I actually met him. I met him in the Times Square event, and like I said, the man is unbelievable. He's unbelievable, to put it mildly. But, like I said, I also cannot blame the man. But these are the facts, beautiful people. You got someone who's older, who's weight drained, who can't make the weight anymore. I mean, he missed weight in his last fight. He missed it by like 0.01 ounce. Like, the man is finished. Chris Eubank cannot make weight anymore. And look, I met Conor Benn. Conor Benn is a very, very small guy. He is extreme. I was actually shocked. Like, I don't know, the man is probably like 5'7", 5'7 and a half, 5'8 most. And he's like he's small. Small head, small waist, not broad shoulders. Like he doesn't have a big structure. Like he's not built like a middleweight. He's not even built like a 54 pounder. He is like a 40 pounder / 47 pounder. And that is why he started his career at 140. But I was actually shocked. And he was wearing tight clothes, tight shirt and tight pants. So like you can tell, you can look at the man's physique, And I actually have a picture with him. I'll post it probably later on. But I get why they are draining Chris Eubank Jr. because Conor Benn is very small, but these are the facts, beautiful people. These are the facts. The facts are Chris Eubank is a older fighter who is finished, cannot make the weight, who's way past his prime, who's being drained to make the weight limit of 160, and more than that, who cannot rehydrate more than 10 pounds after killing himself. And he will be fighting someone who tested positive for PEDs twice. And the person who, I love Conor Benn, like I said, I love the man. And not only is he fighting someone who tested positive twice for PEDs, but he's fighting someone who will be entering the ring with zero weight cut. I mean, the man last week posted a video of himself, like first day of camp. He literally stepped on the scales and he was 160 pounds. The man is literally starting his training camp on weight for the fight. While Chris Eubank Jr. is about to sacrifice a massive piece of himself to not even make the weight, but to get close to making the weight. You know? And not just that, I also blame Ben Shalom. You know, Ben Shalom, you know, what can you say about the man? I don't want to speak too much, but Ben Shalom, you know what I'm saying? But like Ben Shalom, I blame Ben Shalom, you know. How in the world do you represent Chris Eubank Jr. and you didn't fight for the man to enter this fight without a rehydration clause? At least, cancel the rehydration clause. But they are all so greedy. Chris Eubank Jr. got 10 million pounds for the first fight. And he's going to get 10 million pounds for the second fight. Without the sponsors, without everything. You know, when you combine everything, the man's probably going to walk home with like 13 to 15 million pounds. So of course he's going to do the impossible to get the 10 to 15 million pounds. Of course. But we saw what happened after the first fight. His dad, his own dad, Chris Eubank Sr. said, when I was with my son in the ambulance, it was touch and go. The man could have passed away right there and then. How crazy is that? Like, what more do you want? How much further are you guys going to keep on pushing it before a disaster happens? And let's, God forbid, I don't even want to think about, but I'm telling you, mark my words, I just pray to God that Chris Eubank Jr. leaves the ring healthy. And now, look, like the man is so greedy, he didn't even hire a nutritionist in the first fight. Like, he didn't want to pay anyone anything, he just wanted to take all the money and go back home with the money. He didn't even hire a nutritionist, he just did the weight cut on his own. But in this fight, I guess it's going to be a bit better because he got the nutritionist of Bud Crawford. He hired the entire team of Terence Bud Crawford. Coach Bomac, Coach Red, Coach Saul, Bernie the boxer, the nutritionist for Bud Crawford. He literally hired the team of Bud Crawford, you know, the strength and conditioning coach, everyone. So I'm guessing that he's going to have an easier time with the weight cut. But the weight cut is still going to take everything out of him. He will be walking into the ring as a shell of himself. And that is what happened in the first fight. Go watch all of Chris Eubank's old fights. Chris Eubank is usually so strong, so sturdy, so powerful. In that first fight, the man barely was able to stand. You know, he had no balance, you know. And he said that he entered the ring compromised because of an injury that he suffered. But no wonder why you got injured before the camp is because you are killing yourself in the camp to cut the weight. And if you know anything about training in a calorie deficit, you are this close to getting injured. I mean, listen, whenever I'm on a calorie deficit, whenever I'm running, I feel like, I'm in danger. But when you are at a calorie surplus like Conor Benn, when you're training, you just train like an absolute monster. You have zero fears whatsoever when you talk about injuries, when you talk about your health, I mean, you feel like an absolute animal. But especially few weeks into being on a calorie deficit, you feel so fragile. And that is a fact. And I'm talking about being at a calorie deficit. Never mind limiting your water intake. That's when you start playing with your life. And when you start taking punches to the head, all I gotta say is this: Chris Eubank Jr.'s life is in danger. He's in danger. And I hope to God, I pray to God that Turki Al-Sheikh cancels the rehydration clause and just... Like, we saw the fight already. I don't even want to see the rematch. Nobody wants to see the rematch. I guarantee you the rematch will not be bigger than the first fight. Nobody wants to see the rematch. I hate this fight. I hate everything about this fight. And I pray to God that it gets cancelled.